Paul, let's do it.
Goldfinger, he's the man with the Midas touch.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
He's here. Brian Goldfinger, our legal expert on the regulars. What is going on, man?
I'm doing great. I'm just thankful, counting my blessings for every day.
Well, and that's something that I do want to talk to you about, too, because I did see your latest blog. And obviously, I had no idea. And now I'm thankful because it didn't even dawn on me. But I had no idea your office was really, really close to what the situation that happened on Monday in Toronto.
Yeah, on Yonge Street. Our Toronto office is at Yonge and Sheppard, and that's where this gentleman was apprehended courageously by Toronto police, literally right outside my office. And that lunch, I went for a stroll on Yonge Street, caught over to Doris, which is a residential street that runs north-south. And it could have been anybody from my law firm out on Yonge Street. Like, it's not uncommon for us to just go out for a stroll to get a cup of coffee, go to a restaurant, pick up some food, really close to home.
What was it like when you first started kind of hearing the news about what happened?
I got a text from a lawyer friend saying that there had been a fatality around the block. And I thought nothing of it because car accidents happen all the time. They happen at Yonge and Sheppard, Yonge Finch. It's pretty busy, so not a big deal. And then more and more things started rolling in. Like, it just wasn't one fatality, it was many. And then you started hearing helicopters overhead. You could hear helicopters. You heard a lot of sirens from my office. And I said, this is not normal. So we turned on, the news, and we saw just stories that said, all right, let's figure out what's going on here. And then you heard Mayor John Tory get on the TV and said businesses should shut down because the police got to do their thing. And you have no idea if this is, an isolated crazy person. I think there was the Leaf game was that night, and you had no idea, like, if something else is going to happen. You just wanted to go home and hug your kids. And I get home and I see my kids, and the first thing my daughter wants is, "Where's my candy? Where's my candy?"
Puts it in perspective, right?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that as somebody who spends so much time in Toronto, Brian, because, that's a place where you spend a bulk of your time. I mean, there's the initial shock of like, oh my goodness, this is what's happening. And then there's the reflection and maybe some of the sort of strangely positive stories of how the communities have rallied and fundraising. And you mentioned the heroism by the police officer. But now that we've had a couple of days to digest, and Paul, you're a Toronto native, so I'll ask you too, kind of what are you thinking right now about the whole thing?
Yeah, and I know we chatted last week, and I think I said to you at that time, and I really felt that way, that I was angry. More than, I was sad, of course. It's devastating, tragic. But I was angry because it's my city, right? It's where I grew up. I spent a lot of up to my late early 20s. I was a full-time resident of Toronto, and it's a big part of my life. Yonge Street was a big part of my life growing up. Although not as far north, more the downtown from Bloor down. Where all the bars were.
Go figure, Paul.
But Yonge Street was my George Street. As a kid, right? And so very, very angry that this could happen in Toronto and be perpetrated by somebody. I was just very upset about that, as well as just upset about the incident itself and the scope of it and the lives affected. So, but I think on reflection, it's like with the Broncos bus crash, right? You start seeing the response and the outpouring and stuff, and man, is that ever therapeutic? I mean, that just, it doesn't make the hurt go away for sure, but man, it's just so inspiring to see that and to hear that. The memorial that I think you've probably seen it down there, Brian, that's grown down there is huge. GoFundMe, and kudos. I know it's been said 1,000 times before, but kudos to that officer and the way that was handled. And,
unbelievable.
That is absolutely incredible. Yeah. When you think about it, that he had every reason to use his weapon in that situation, and nobody would have said anything.
Right.
Nobody would have said anything, but the restraint that he showed, incredible, absolutely incredible. You may never see that again.
Brian Goldfinger Personal Injury Law. I would say that was pretty well thought. Yeah. I'm sure you'd echo those sentiments. And how busy a stretch is this? Give people an idea.
Well, it's a busy stretch because there's so many residential condos and businesses around around there. There's government offices as well, and you got to take this into consideration. That was like the first nice day after a long miserable winter where you can actually go outside without winter boots, without a winter jacket. And I was just like, let's go out for a stroll, and that's what everybody was pretty much doing, like enjoying the weather. Just trying to get out, and it's very busy. You can't, it's the main drag for Toronto. You can't compare it to George Street being the main drag just because the population is that much more dense. The highest building on George Street is how many stories? I don't know. But the highest building on Yonge Street there is well over 50,
One small blessing, too, if this had to happen, and it's a shame that it did, it was a Monday. If this was a Saturday, we'd be talking about kids. We'd be talking about children. They'd be out with their parents. Kids are out Saturday with their folks, right? It's a small blessing. It's a small light in this darkness that it was. If it had to happen, and it didn't have to happen, but if it had to happen, it was a Monday. It was a weekday, and there were no kids, as far as I know, amongst the.
Based on the definition of kids, I know one of them was a student. So
but I'm talking like but that's a small blessing for sure because they would have been out of school, right? It would have been packed with kids.
Brian, it feels ridiculous to kind of ask this question, but legally speaking, there are people who are injured in these kind of circumstances. There are families who have lost loved ones. What happens in legal recourse against this particular individual beyond just the criminal system, if anything?
Tough to answer right now until more facts come out. Really, I need to get more
Is that
facts.
Right?
Yeah, and I don't want to report sad news on fatality damages. I did that in a previous blog. Like everyone thinks, well, the person died, they're entitled to millions and millions of dollars. Fatality claims in Canada, in Ontario for that matter, they're very low, and I don't want to depress anybody even more than perhaps they're already getting depressed by this, sad story. But
okay, so that's something that we'll watch whenever we get more details. Brian Goldfinger Personal Injury Law. On a much more happy note, I know you're going to be a van guy coming up soon. He's going to be driving a van. I mean, I don't know how we segue from that conversation, but that's why they pay me the big bucks, Brian. We'll go to the van guy over here. What's going on? Tell me about this. Because this is something I'm going to have to do too.
Yeah, you have the rest of your life to drive a sports car. You only have, I guess, a certain period of time to drive a van and really rock it, so I'm going to own it. So I put an order in for a van so I can get the kids around, and I hope it goes well. Yeah.
Did you consider, because my wife's like, well, we're going to do the van thing, and I'm like, is there any way that they make SUVs up to that standard now?
They
that
do.
You could maybe do that?
You could totally rock an SUV. It's just what's more practical and what's going to be more fuel efficient, because the big SUVs are very big and accessing the third row is you can do it. With a van is easier, and then you get the pilot chairs in the back so the kids can run up and down the aisles in the van. And you get all
like a little bus.
It's like a little bus. So it's like, all right, let's go for it. Why not?
we actually had a safari van when our kids were small, and they were in sports.
Oh, that's a big one, isn't it?
And the safari van, the old ones, if you remember, were huge, right? They had like a big box on wheels. That thing was a lifesaver, I'll tell you. Between the equipment and the trips to Ottawa, Guelph, Barrie, wherever we were going. And 3 kids, right? And, all pretty young. It was a lifesaver. But what I didn't like about it, and, I'm not going to say that I did this often, but sometimes when the kids are acting up, you want to reach back and give them a little cuff. Well, there's a lot of places to hide in a van, right? It's not like a Honda Fit where you turn around and you slap them upside, right? I mean, you're reaching, right? So now it's like, honey, hold the wheel. I got to go back and discipline somebody here. So
the Paul Rellinger School of Parenting, right
that's
there.
That's right, yeah. So that was a bit of a disadvantage. I wasn't too impressed with that because they knew where to hide in that thing. It was huge.
Brian Goldfinger Personal Injury Law here on Talk Sports Radio Extra 90.5. One good thing, Brian, is that the Toronto Raptors were able to grind out a victory the other night. I know you're a huge Raptor fan. You're excited about game number 6, although you and I both share sort of the same mindset going into tonight. We've seen this movie before, and for those who don't follow it that closely, Washington, while an inconsistent playoff team in the past, is usually very, very good at home.
Yeah, they're going to have a tough time tonight. I'm predicting a loss. Just because they're the Raptors and they want to put their fan base through a lot of misery. So they either get swept in 4 or win in 7. I'm predicting the win in 7. If Fred VanVleet, I read this status, he's still questionable for tonight. if he plays and he performs like Willis Reed for the New York Knicks coming off, and he has a sensational game, then perhaps they win. But I'm predicting Raps in 7.
Is there a concern, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but I believe in the fourth quarter of the game the other night, DeRozan and Lowry combined for 4 points in the final quarter. Is that a more of a concern than it should be? Or
no, it means that they're sharing the ball, which is a good thing, because the problem in Game 4 was that DeMar had the bulk of the workload and took the bulk of the shots. Whereas if DeMar is sharing the ball and Kyle is sharing the ball, they're just that much more difficult to stop. Now, I'm going to be totally honest with you guys. Game 5, so the last game that they won, it felt like a loss.
It did.
And
it really did.
I will be honest with you. I PVR the games, okay, because you got to put the kids down, etc. And I had a lot of problems watching the game. I watched a lot of it on fast forward because Serge Ibaka, he has a crazy stat line where he has more turnovers than field goals ever since Game 2. And that's really, really hard to do for a player who doesn't dribble the ball very much and doesn't handle the ball. So they're just shooting themselves in the foot left, right, and center. And I said, I can't watch this ineptitude. You know, you guys are playing so poorly, you deserve to lose. And then in the fourth, they pull it out, and I was thrilled. But it looked like a loss for the whole game.
He can't watch ineptitude. He'd make a lousy Leaf fan, wouldn't he?
Listen,
I would, yeah.
listen. I think what I look at, Brian, and again, I just look at the level in which we've seen Philadelphia play.
Oh,
I've seen
amazing.
the level in which,
no.
I mean,
Pacers,
LeBron,
yeah.
well, my Indiana Pacers. I told Graham the other day, because he was in here complaining about the Leafs, and I get it. I said, there's 2 types of pain. One, you watch your team get dominated in the third period and blow a lead. And then there's LeBron James is going to hit a game-winning 3 after getting away with a foul and a goaltend and then nailing it.
That was brutal.
I want to make a brutal admission to you, Jordan. I have enjoyed watching the Indiana Pacers this playoff series,
All right.
and I have also enjoyed watching the Utah Jazz. And those are 2 teams I don't normally enjoy watching because they're very bland. They have a very slow style of play.
Rebounds and defense.
It's just very vanilla, for lack of a better term.
Especially when Victor Oladipo is going 2 of 15. He's usually a guy who adds a little bit of excitement. And if he was even average the last 2 games, Indiana would have won this series. Yeah. So I'm not optimistic about tonight because LeBron James, he's eliminated the Pacers 4 of the last 7 years, and it's looking like 5 and 8 maybe.
Join the club, the whole East. What can I say? Yeah.
Every now and then, LeBron reminds us he's still LeBron. He's the man.
Yeah, definitely. So you're predicting a loss tonight.
Yeah.
What do you think? What's your assessment of the playoffs as a whole right now?
Great.
Yeah?
They've been great. Yeah, last night's Bucks-Celtics game, phenomenal. Fun to watch. I think the Celtics are going to take that to Game 7 at home. And I just think all throughout the playoffs have been really good. Like the Indiana series with LeBron has been phenomenal as well. I'm impressed with Indiana putting up a fight. They've shown a backbone that the Raptors have never showed against LeBron James. When the Raptors face LeBron, they generally fold, except for that year when they had Bismack Biyombo. They took him to 6. But I've been very impressed, yeah.
Out west, so it looks like everything's kind of going according to plan, except for maybe the Oklahoma City Thunder, and you mentioned the Utah Jazz.
Well, you know who I'm interested to see are the Pelicans. You know, they swept the Trailblazers.
Which I had Portland, I'm not going to say I was an expert, but I had them as a little bit of a dark horse. Thought, puncher's chance. I think for them it was just bad matchup, just terrible.
It was,
matchup.
but they're facing Golden State next round, right? So Pelicans, Golden State, and then the argument's being made, well, with Curry out, who's the best player on the court? And they're saying perhaps it's Anthony Davis, and Anthony Davis will throw a curveball to Golden State such that they have really nobody to match up with him. You could put Durant on him, but it's a tough matchup. So I'm curious to see what happens in that series.
Yeah, me too. Brian Goldfinger Personal Injury Law. Brian, if somebody is interested in getting a hold of you, how can they go about doing that?
Visit the website, goldfingerlaw.com, or you can certainly email me at Brian, BRIAN, at goldfingerlaw.com.
Okay, perfect. And we'll make sure to tweet that out as well. Now, you heard the intro coming into Kiss's Detroit Rock City.
I did.
So I thought I'd play this for you. So Brian was kind enough to cut us some liners, and he cut a few other ones.
This is Brian Goldfinger of Goldfinger Injury Lawyers. If you want to hear the most compelling interviews on radio, keep it live. Keep it tuned onto the regulars on Extra 90.5. I'm going to do it again. Keep it real. I'm sorry. I want to keep it real. Keep it real. Give me a pen.
Give me a pen. That's great.
Give me a pen.
Yeah, that's a good drop right there. Brian, thank you so much for coming in today. Really appreciate it.
That was great. Thanks guys.
Brian.